I knew I was in trouble the moment I heard his voice behind the corridor wall. Low, controlled, discussing security weaknesses at a children's Christmas gala, like he was planning where to place centerpieces. But it was the woman's response, sharp and bitter, that made my blood freeze. The kids will be perfect cover. No one expects an attack at a charity event. I should have run. Instead, I stayed frozen in that service hallway, phone clutched in my trembling hand, listening to two people plan a massacre at the event I'd spent the last few months perfecting. The event that was supposed to save my dying business and my brother's future. The voices moved away, fading down another corridor, and I was left standing there alone in the cold silence, trying to decide if I was brave enough to do something about what I'd just heard, or smart enough to pretend I'd never been there at all. 3 months earlier, I hadn't known any of this was coming. I'd been knee-deep in a 6-year-old's dinosaur birthday party at a community center on the south side, wearing a T-Rex costume head that smelled like old pizza, when my phone buzzed with an email that would change everything. The subject line read, "High-profile Christmas charity event. Immediate response required." I almost deleted it as spam. Instead, I'd pulled off the foam dinosaur head, read the message twice, and felt my heart start racing for reasons that had nothing to do with wearing polyester in an overheated room. Someone wanted to hire me, Leora Dane, whose business bank account currently held $217, to plan a Christmas gala for 500 guests at the historic Riverside Hotel. The budget they quoted was more than I'd made in the past year combined. The catch? They needed an answer within 48 hours, and the event was in 3.5 months. I'd called Rowan that night from my cramped apartment in Bridgeport, staring at the overdue rent notice on my kitchen counter. "It's too good to be true," my brother had said, his voice crackling over the phone from the library where he studied between his campus security shifts. "Nobody offers that kind of money without strings, Lee." "The string is that I have to be good enough to pull it off," I'd argued, already mentally cataloging what I'd need. "And I am. You're also $3,000 behind on your business loan, which is why I'm taking the job." He'd sighed, that particular sound that meant he was 19 and worried about his 27-year-old sister but trying not to show it. "Just be careful, okay?" I'd promised I would be. That promise felt like a lifetime ago now. The first site meeting had been a week after I'd accepted. I'd arrived at the Riverside Hotel with my portfolio, my measuring tape, and the nervous energy of someone who knew this was her last real shot. The venue coordinator, a brittle woman named Patricia, had given me the basics. The client wanted a family-friendly Christmas event for underprivileged children, complete with dinner, gifts, and a performance stage. Very wholesome, very public, very generous. "Who's the client?" I'd asked. Patricia's smile had frozen at the edges. "The Moretti Foundation. They prefer to keep a low profile." I should have asked more questions then. I should have Googled the name before I'd signed anything. But I'd been too busy noticing how the hotel's current staging plan would create a bottleneck near the fire exits, how the proposed table arrangement would make it nearly impossible for servers to move, how the children's performance area was positioned directly under a heavy chandelier that made my skin crawl just looking at it. I'd spent 4 hours that day redrawing the entire layout. Patricia had looked at my work with something between annoyance and grudging respect. "The foundation will need to approve any changes. Then set up the meeting," I'd said, "because I won't put my name on an event where a kid could get hurt." That meeting had happened a week later, 2.5 months ago now. I'd been in the hotel's administrative corridor, reviewing kitchen access with one of the catering managers, when I'd heard raised voices echoing from the private conference room at the end of the hall. Male voices, sharp and angry, the kind of anger that made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. Then the door had opened. 6 men in expensive suits had filed out, not speaking, their faces hard. The last one had held the door and looked back inside. "We'll handle it, boss." And then he had emerged. Darius Moretti was not what I'd expected. I'd been imagining some charitable businessman, maybe a tech CEO with a guilt complex. Instead, I got a man who moved like violence contained in an Italian suit, dark-haired and dark-eyed, with the kind of face that made you think of Renaissance paintings and modern nightmares in equal measure. He was maybe 35, maybe older. It was hard to tell when someone looked at you like they were calculating exactly how much effort it would take to make you disappear. He'd stopped when he saw me standing there with my clipboard and my cheap blazer. "You're the event planner," he'd said, not a question. "Leora Dane." I'd extended my hand, proud that it didn't shake. He'd glanced at my hand but didn't take it. "Patricia says you want to redesign everything." "I want to make sure no one gets hurt," I'd corrected. "There's a difference." Something had flickered in his expression then. Amusement, maybe, or assessment. "Show me." So I had. I'd walked him through the venue, pointing out every hazard, every choke point, every design flaw that treated the children like decorative elements instead of actual humans who needed space and safety and clear paths to exits. I'd expected him to argue, to tell me I was overthinking it, to dismiss me the way most clients did when I pushed back on their vision. Instead, he'd listened. "You notice things," he'd said. Finally, standing in the ballroom where ice blue uplighting would eventually transform the space into a winter wonderland. "Things other people miss. It's my job to notice." "No." He'd turned to face me fully then, and I'd felt the weight of his attention like a physical thing. "Your job is to make it pretty. Noticing danger is something else." I hadn't known what to say to that. "I'm approving your changes," he'd continued. "All of them. Patricia will coordinate with you. I'll also be assigning 2 of my security team to work with you directly." "That's not necessary." "It is." His voice had gone cold enough to stop my protest mid-sentence. "This event matters to me, Miss Dane. The children who attend matter to me. And anyone connected to this foundation, even temporarily, is under my protection, whether they like it or not. And if something goes wrong because you miss something," he added quietly, "we will have a problem I won't let you walk away from." The way he'd said protection had made it sound less like a gift and more like a prison sentence. But I'd needed the money, I'd needed the exposure, I'd needed this to work. So I'd nodded and told myself I could handle 3 months of an overprotective client, even one who made every instinct I had scream dangerous whenever he was in the room. That had been 10 weeks ago. Since then, I'd thrown myself into the work. I'd negotiated with vendors, refined the staging 6 times, coordinated with the children's choir from St. Augustine's shelter, arranged for gifts and meals, and a Santa who actually knew how to talk to traumatized kids. I'd slowly transformed a generic hotel ballroom into something that might actually feel magical for children who didn't get much magic in their lives. I'd also gotten used to the 2 security guards who shadowed me during site visits, the way hotel staff went quiet when certain people walked by, and the growing certainty that the Moretti Foundation was not exactly a standard charitable organization. I'd Googled Darius Moretti one night about 6 weeks in, unable to sleep. The results had been educational, alleged organized crime connections, a dead older brother who'd supposedly run the family business before him, rumors of everything from racketeering to money laundering. Nothing proven, nothing charged. Just smoke and shadows and the kind of power that kept prosecutors nervous. I'd closed my laptop and told myself it didn't matter. The event was legitimate. The kids were real. My contract was clean. I could do this job and walk away clean too. Over the past 10 weeks, I'd seen Darius maybe a dozen times. Always at the venue, always surrounded by his men, always watching me with that unnerving focus that made my pulse jump in ways I refused to examine too closely. He'd approved every change I'd proposed. He'd increased the budget when I'd argued that cheaper decorations would look cheap, and these kids deserved better. He'd even shown up to one of my coordination meetings with the St. Augustine staff, sitting quietly in the back while I walked them through the performance schedule. When the meeting had ended and the staff had filed out, he'd stayed. "You're good at this," he'd said. "It's what I do." "No." He'd stood, buttoning his jacket. "Most people plan events. You build experiences. There's a difference." I hadn't known how to respond to that, so I just gathered my things and tried not to think about the way his words had settled somewhere warm and dangerous in my chest. Earlier that week, he'd called me directly, not through Patricia, not through his assistant, but from his personal number. "The event is in 2 weeks," he'd said, without preamble. "I need you to do a final security walkthrough. Every corridor, every entrance, every space the children or staff will access. That's what your security team is for. My security team thinks about threats from the outside. You think about threats to the children themselves. Do the walkthrough. So here I was, 2 weeks before the biggest event of my career, doing a final check of the service corridors, the behind-the-scenes routes that staff would use on event night. I'd wanted to make sure they were clearly marked, that no one would accidentally lead a lost child into a storage area or kitchen full of hazards. I'd been standing in a side hallway near the loading docks, making notes on my phone when I'd heard the voices. At first, I'd thought it was just staff discussing logistics. Then I'd heard the word attack, and my blood had gone cold. I'd frozen, barely breathing, as the man's voice laid out a plan with chilling specificity. They were talking about the gala. My gala. They knew the date, the venue, the expected attendance. They knew about the children's performance, about the timing of dinner service, about the moment when every camera in the room would be focused on the stage. The frame needs to be airtight, the man had said. Anonymous tips, planted evidence, make it look like Moretti's been using the charity as a front. The kids will be perfect cover, the woman had answered, her voice sharp with something that sounded almost like satisfaction. No one expects an attack at a charity event. I'd pressed myself against the wall, my hands shaking so badly I'd nearly dropped my phone. I should have run then. Should have gotten out of that corridor and straight to my car, and maybe straight to the airport. But I'd stayed. I'd listened to them discuss entry points and timing and how many casualties would be acceptable to sell the story. And when they'd finally finished and their footsteps had faded away down another corridor, I'd been left standing there with the terrible knowledge that if I did nothing, children would die. Children at the event I'd designed. Children I'd promised to keep safe. Now I stood in the empty hallway, my heart hammering against my ribs, trying to make my brain work. I needed to tell. Someone. But who? The police? And say what? That I'd overheard a vague conversation about an attack. I didn't even know who the speakers were. I hadn't seen their faces. The man's voice had been unfamiliar. The woman's had been muffled, bitter, but I couldn't place it. And if I went to the police, I'd have to explain why I was here in the first place. I'd have to admit I was working for Darius Moretti. They'd ask questions I couldn't answer. They might shut down the event entirely, and with it, any chance I had of saving my business. 3 months of work, gone. But if I stayed quiet, I pressed my palm against my forehead, trying to think past the panic. There was only one person who had the power to actually stop this. One person who had the resources, the connections, and the ruthless capability to protect this event. Darius Moretti, the same man those conspirators wanted to frame and destroy. I pulled out my phone with shaking hands and scrolled to the contact Patricia had given me for emergencies. Though somewhere around week 5, he'd texted me directly, and that number had replaced hers in my mental hierarchy of who to call when things go wrong. My thumb hovered over the call button. If I made this call, I was choosing a side. I was pulling myself directly into whatever war was brewing. I'd no longer be just a contractor. I'd be a witness, a liability, someone who knew too much. But those kids... I hit the call button. It rang once, twice. Miss Dane. His voice was dark and alert, like he'd been expecting problems. It's late. I need to talk to you, I said, surprised by how steady my voice sounded. Now, in person. It's about the gala. A pause. Are you safe? The question caught me off guard. Yes, I think so. Stay where you are. I'm sending someone. No, I said quickly. I'll come to you. Where are you? Another pause, longer this time. The foundation office, top floor of the Michigan Avenue building. I'll let security know you're coming. He ended the call before I could second-guess myself. I stood there for one more moment, staring at my phone, thinking about Rowan and overdue rent, and the simple life I'd been trying so hard to build. 3 months of careful work, of keeping my head down, of telling myself I could take his money and walk away clean. Then I thought about 30 children in Christmas costumes, singing carols while someone planned to use them as cover for an attack. I walked toward the parking garage, my footsteps echoing in the empty corridor. By the time I reached my car, I'd made my choice. I was going to tell Darius Moretti everything I'd heard. And whatever came after that, whatever door I was opening, whatever world I was stepping into, I'd deal with it. Because I'd rather step into his darkness than stand by while children became collateral damage. The foundation office occupied the entire top floor of a glass tower on Michigan Avenue, and walking into it felt like stepping into a different world. Everything was sleek, dark, and expensive. Polished marble, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the glittering city, and security that checked my ID twice before letting me through. A man in a black suit escorted me down a hallway lined with abstract art that probably cost more than my car. He knocked once on a heavy wooden door, then opened it without waiting for a response. "Miss Dane," he said, and stepped aside. The office was exactly what I'd expected. Massive, minimal, powerful. Dark wood desk, leather chairs, a bar cart in the corner that looked like it had never been touched. And standing by the window with his back to me, phone pressed to his ear, was Darius. "I don't care what he thinks he's owed," he said into the phone, his voice cold and flat. He had his chance. Now he has nothing. He ended the call and turned to face me. For a moment, neither of us spoke. He looked different here, less contained maybe, or just more himself. He'd taken off his jacket, rolled up his shirt sleeves. There was something almost predatory about the way he watched me cross the room. "You sounded afraid on the phone," he said finally. "I am afraid." "Of me?" "Of what I heard." His expression shifted, sharpening. He gestured to one of the chairs facing his desk. "Sit. Tell me everything." So I did. I told him about the final walkthrough, about standing in that corridor making notes, about the voices that had stopped me cold. I repeated what I could remember, the discussion of security weaknesses, the mention of an attack, the woman's cold assessment that children would make perfect cover, the plan to frame him with planted evidence and anonymous tips. I watched his face as I spoke. Most people would have interrupted, demanded details, shown some reaction. Darius just listened, utterly still, his dark eyes fixed on me with an intensity that made my skin prickle. "You didn't see them," he said when I finished. "No, I heard them through the wall. By the time I thought to look, they'd moved away down another corridor." "The man's voice. Did you recognize it?" "No, I've never heard it before." "And the woman?" I hesitated. I couldn't place it. It was muffled, bitter, but I didn't recognize who it was. He stood, pacing to the window. His hands were in his pockets, but there was tension in every line of his body. "You should have called me immediately." "I called you 20 minutes later." 20 minutes where they could have realized someone overheard. 20 minutes where you could have been followed, grabbed, silenced. He turned back to face me, and there was something almost angry in his expression. "You put yourself at risk." "The event is in 2 weeks," I said, my own voice sharper than I'd intended. "Those kids are at risk. That's what matters. Those kids are my responsibility. And I'm the one who spent 3 months planning every detail of that night." I stood too, refusing to let him tower over me. "I know that venue better than anyone. I know the sight lines, the entry points, the places where someone could plant something or hide something or hurt someone. If you want to stop this, you need me." The silence that followed felt dangerous. Then, unexpectedly, his mouth curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. "You're right," I blinked. What?" "You're right. I do need you." He moved back to his desk, pulled out his phone, and made a call. "Get to my office. Now. We have a problem." He ended the call and looked at me. "My head of security is coming up. You're going to tell him exactly what you told me. Then we're going to redesign the event's security structure. And you—" He paused, his eyes holding mine. "You are not going anywhere near that hotel alone again. Not your apartment alone. Nowhere. Do you understand? I'm not some helpless—" "You're a witness to a conspiracy," he cut in, his voice going hard. "Which makes you either an asset or a target, depending on who finds you first. I'm making sure you stay an asset." Before I could argue, the door opened. The man who entered was tall, broad-shouldered, with the kind of face that had seen too many fights. He looked at me, then at Darius, his expression carefully neutral. "This is Luca," Darius said, "my head of security. Luca, this is Miss Dane. She just saved us from walking into a trap." I spent the next 30 minutes repeating my story, answering sharp questions. What time had I been in the corridor? Which corridor exactly? What were the precise words I'd heard? When I finished, Luca looked at Darius. Could be Belanti. They've been too quiet lately. Run deep background checks on everyone with venue access, Darius said. I want to know who's behind this by morning. Luca nodded and left. The silence that followed felt heavy. You should go home, Darius said finally. Pack a bag. You're staying somewhere safe until this is over. I have a job. Vendors to coordinate. A brother who... Your brother is already being moved to a secure location. My blood went cold. What? I sent someone to his campus an hour ago. He's fine. He's safe. But if these people are serious about framing me, they'll look for pressure points. You and your brother just became two of them. I stood so fast the chair scraped loudly against the floor. You had no right. I had every right. He set down his glass and faced me fully. You came to me with this information. That put you under my protection, which means I don't let you or anyone you care about become collateral damage. Rowan doesn't even know about any of this. And he doesn't need to. He thinks he's being moved because there was a gas leak in his building. He'll stay in one of my properties, under guard, until this is over. I wanted to scream at him. But the cold, practical part of my brain knew he was right. If someone wanted to hurt Darius, Rowan was leverage. I need to talk to him, I said finally. Darius pulled a phone from his desk. Drawer. Use this. It's secure. His number's already programmed in. I took the phone, hating how much sense this made. Where are you planning to put me? Here. I have a guest residence on the floor below this one. 24-hour security. No one gets in without my approval. I'm not staying in your building. It's the most secure location I have. He moved closer, and I forced myself not to step back. Miss Dane, someone just tried to weaponize children to destroy me. They're not playing games. Neither am I. I have an event to plan. You'll plan it from here. Video calls, secure channels. You'll still run everything, just from a location where no one can get to you. We stood there, barely 3 feet apart, and I could feel my pulse hammering. He was too close, too intense, and some traitorous part of my brain was noticing things I had no business noticing. The way his rolled sleeves revealed forearms corded with muscle, the way he smelled like expensive cologne, and something darker underneath. I didn't ask for this, I said quietly. No, he agreed. You chose it. When you called me instead of walking away. I chose to protect those kids. And I'm choosing to protect you, whether you like it or not. The guest residence was nothing like I'd expected. I'd been imagining something cold and minimal, a holding cell with expensive furniture. Instead, it was warm, exposed brick, soft lighting, a kitchen that actually looked used. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered the same stunning view as his office, the city spreading out below like a carpet of light. Everything you need is here, the woman who'd escorted me, Nina, said, gesturing around. Kitchen's fully stocked. Office set up in the second bedroom. Security contact is on speed dial on the landline. How long have you worked for him? I asked. She smiled slightly. Long enough to know that when he says someone's under his protection, he means it. You're safe here, Miss Dane. After she left, I called Rowan. Lee, whose number is this? It's me. Are you okay? Yeah, I'm fine. They moved me to this crazy nice apartment because of the gas leak. There are security guys everywhere, though. I know, I'm sorry, it's temporary. What's going on? You sound strange. I closed my eyes. There have been some complications with the event. My client is being extra cautious. You're safer where you are. Safer from what? From potential issues. I hated lying to him. Just stay where they put you, okay? And if anything feels wrong, call me immediately. On this number. You're a terrible liar, Lee. I'm fine, Rowan, I promise. After we hung up, I stood by the window, staring at the city. 3 months ago, I'd been planning birthday parties. Now I was living in a Mafia boss's building, while someone out there might have seen me in that corridor. Might know I'd overheard something I shouldn't have. I didn't sleep much that night. The next morning, Darius showed up at 7 with coffee and a laptop. You're planning an event, he said, setting both on the kitchen counter. So plan it. I've had Patricia forward everything to this secure server. Your vendors can reach you through encrypted channels. You really thought of everything. I don't leave things to chance. He poured himself coffee from his pot. Luca's team found something. The SUV from the loading dock was rented by a shell company. We're tracing it now. So someone was watching. Someone was there. Whether they saw you specifically, we don't know yet. His eyes found mine. But I'm not taking chances with your safety. Over the next week, we fell into a strange routine. I worked from the residence, coordinating with vendors, finalizing the performance schedule, managing the 1,000 tiny details that made an event run smoothly. Darius would appear at odd hours, sometimes to update me on security developments, sometimes just to sit at the kitchen counter with his own work while I paced and made phone calls. He was there when I argued with the lighting vendor about child-safe equipment. He was there when I had a minor breakdown over the catering menu and whether any of the kids had allergies I'd missed. He was there, quiet and solid and somehow comforting, even though he barely spoke. "You care about this," he said one evening, watching me reorganize my seating charts for the dozenth time. "Of course I care. It's my job." "No." He stood, moving closer to look at my charts. "Most people would plan an event. You're trying to give them childhood." His words hit something deep in my chest that I didn't want to examine. "Some of those kids," I said quietly, "they've been in and out of shelters, foster care. They've seen things kids shouldn't see. For one night, I want them to feel safe, special, like someone actually cares about them." When I looked up, he was watching me with an expression I couldn't read. "My brother Marco," he said finally. "He started this charity before he died. He said the same thing, that these kids deserved to feel like they mattered." It was the first time he'd mentioned his brother to me directly. "I'm sorry," I said, "about your loss." He nodded once, then changed the subject, but something had shifted between us in that moment. 6 days before the event, Darius came to the residence at midnight. I was still awake, reviewing security protocols, and I heard his key in the lock before he appeared. He looked different, tie loosened, jaw tight, something dangerous simmering beneath his surface. "We found them," he said. I stood. "The conspirators?" "One of them. The man from the corridor. He's Belanti, a lieutenant. Luca's team tracked the shell company to their front operations." He paced to the window, his hands in his pockets. "He's been watching you." My stomach dropped. "Watching me how?" "Your apartment, the hotel. They have photos." He turned to face me, and his expression was pure, controlled fury. "They know you overheard them, Leora. They've been trying to figure out if you told anyone." The use of my first name, the confirmation that I was truly in danger, it made everything suddenly, terrifyingly real. "What happens now?" I asked. "Now I make sure they never get close to you, or those kids, or this event." He moved toward me, and I found myself backing up until I hit the kitchen counter. "But I need to know, are you still in? Because once we start this, once I move against them, there's no pulling back. You'll be tied to me, to this world." I was tied to it the moment I overheard that conversation. "No. You were a witness. Now I'm asking you to be a partner." His hands came down on the counter on either side of me, caging me in without touching me. "I'm asking you to trust me, to stay, to help me redesign every aspect of that event so those children stay safe, and the Belantis walk into a trap instead of setting one." I should have been afraid, should have been thinking about exit strategies and witness protection and everything sensible. Instead, I was noticing how close he was, how his breath was warm against my face, how his eyes had gone dark and intense and focused on me like I was the only thing in the world that mattered. "Yes," I heard myself say. "I'm in." "You're sure?" "I'm sure." For a long moment, neither of us moved. The air between us felt electric, charged with something that had been building for weeks, and was now crackling so loud I could barely think past it. "Leora," he said, his voice rough, "if you're going to walk away from this, from me, do it now." "I'm not walking away." His hand came up, fingers brushing my jaw with devastating gentleness. "You should. I'm not a good man. I do things that would horrify you. I've built an empire on violence and fear and ruthless calculation. But when I look at you," he stopped, his thumb tracing my cheekbone. "When I look at you, I want to be the man who deserves someone who sees the world the way you do." My breath caught. "Darius." Tell me to stop. Tell me you don't feel this. Tell me anything that will make me step back. I should have. Every logical part of my brain was screaming at me to push him away, to remember who he was and what he did and how dangerous this all was. But instead, I reached up and pulled him down to me. The kiss was nothing like I'd imagined. It wasn't gentle or tentative. It was fierce, consuming, like something that had been held back too long and was finally breaking free. His hands tangled in my hair, tilting my head back, and I pressed closer, desperate for more contact. More of this, more of him. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, his forehead rested against mine. "This is a terrible idea," I whispered. "The worst," he agreed. "I'm still not walking away." His laugh was low and rough. "Good, because I wasn't going to let you." He kissed me again, softer this time, and I felt something in my chest crack open, some wall I'd been building around myself since the moment I'd taken this job. I was falling for a man who lived in shadows, and I was choosing it with my eyes wide open. The next 5 days were a blur of controlled chaos and quiet intensity. By day, I transformed into a different version of myself, someone who could coordinate 50 vendors via encrypted channels, redesign an entire event's security flow, and make a dozen critical decisions before noon. Darius had given me access to resources I'd never dreamed of. A security consultant who'd worked presidential details, a child psychologist who helped me plan the performance staging to minimize stress, even a team that could background check every single staff member down to the parking attendants. By night, the kiss hung between us like a question neither of us knew how to answer. He didn't kiss me again, didn't push, but he was always there, reviewing my updated floor plans, sitting across from me while I finalized gift distributions. His presence a constant weight I felt even when he wasn't in the room. "The Belantes are getting nervous," he told me 3 days before the event, standing at my window with his phone in hand. "Luca's been feeding them false information through a source they think is secure. They believe their plan is still on track." "What's the actual plan?" I asked. Looking up from my seating charts, he turned to face me. "We let them make their move, but on our terms, in a controlled way. You've redesigned the event so the children are never in the primary target zones. When they strike, we'll be ready. And the frame job? We're documenting everything. When this is over, the evidence trail will lead straight back to them, not me." It should have terrified me. Instead, I felt a strange calm, the kind that came from finally having some control over the chaos. "I want to be there," I said, "at the event, not hidden away somewhere." "Absolutely not. Darius, you're the one who redesigned the entire security structure." He moved closer, his voice going quiet. "Which means you're also the one they'll target if they realize their plan is compromised. I'm not putting you in that room. Those kids need me there. If something goes wrong, if someone panics, I know how to handle it. Your security team doesn't." We stared at each other, and I could see the war happening behind his eyes, the part that wanted to lock me away somewhere safe fighting against the part that knew I was right. "If you're there," he said finally, "you don't leave my sight. Not for a second. Deal?" His hand came up, fingers brushing my cheek in that gentle way that made my heart stutter. "You're going to be the death of me, Leora Dane." "I certainly hope not. I'm not great with funerals." The corner of his mouth lifted, not quite a smile, but close. Then his phone buzzed, and the moment shattered. He looked at the screen, and his expression went cold. "What is it?" I asked. "Vivienne wants to meet. Tomorrow. Says she has concerns about the event." "Marco's widow?" He nodded, already typing a response. "She's been involved with the charity since Marco died. Helps with donor relations, guest lists. I should have included her in more of the planning, but..." He stopped, jaw tightening. "I've been keeping my distance. It's complicated." "Because you blame yourself for his death." His eyes snapped to mine, sharp and surprised. "You mentioned him once," I said quietly. "The way you talked about the charity. It's not just duty, it's grief." For a long moment, he didn't speak. Then, "Marco was better at this than me. The public-facing parts, the charm. He actually believed in redemption." His voice went rough. "I got him killed believing in the wrong person." "That's not..." "It is." He pocketed his phone. Vivienne deserves better than a brother-in-law who can barely look at her without seeing my failures. But she's right to have concerns. I'll meet with her tomorrow, make sure she knows the event is secure. Something flickered at the edge of my thoughts, some connection I couldn't quite grasp. The woman's voice in the corridor had been bitter, grieving almost, and Vivienne was grieving too. But that was insane. Vivienne was Marco's widow. She loved him. Why would she work with the people trying to destroy everything he'd built? I pushed the thought away. The meeting was scheduled for 2 p.m. at the foundation office. I was supposed to stay in the residence, continue finalizing details. But some instinct I couldn't name made me restless, anxious. At 1:30, I took the elevator up to Darius's floor. The outer office was empty. His assistant must have been at lunch. I could hear voices through his partially open door. Darius's low rumble and a woman's voice, elegant and controlled. I should have announced myself, should have knocked. Instead, I stood there, frozen, as that woman's voice drifted through the gap. Can't keep pretending this charity means anything, Darius. Marco's dead. He's been dead for 2 years. The charity was his legacy. His legacy? Her laugh was sharp, bitter. His legacy was trusting you, and look where that got him. Vivienne, don't. I've played along with this farce because I had no choice. But I'm done watching you parade his memory around while you destroy everything he actually cared about. My breath caught. That voice, that specific bitter, clipped way she said legacy. I'd heard it before. In the corridor, through the wall. The kids will be perfect cover. My hands started shaking. The event is in 2 days, Darius was saying, his voice tight with control. After that, if you want to step away from the foundation, I'll understand. Oh, I'm not stepping away. Something in her tone made my skin crawl. I'm going to make sure everyone sees exactly what you are, Darius. Marco died because of you, and you're going to pay for it. I must have made some sound, a gasp, a step, something, because suddenly Vivienne was striding toward the door, and I barely had time to step back before she emerged. She stopped when she saw me. Her face was perfectly composed, elegant in morning black, but her eyes were cold as winter. "Miss Dane," she said, "how convenient." Then she was past me, moving toward the elevators, and I was left standing there with my heart hammering and puzzle pieces clicking into place with horrible clarity. Darius appeared in the doorway. "Leora? What are you?" He saw my face. "What's wrong?" "It's her," I whispered. "The woman from the corridor. It's Vivienne." The next 30 minutes were a controlled explosion. Darius pulled me into his office, locked the door, and made me repeat everything I'd just heard. Then he called Luca, Nico, and 2 others I didn't recognize. By the time they arrived, I'd told the story 3 times, and each time I was more certain. "The voice matches," I said, watching Luca's face harden. The bitterness, the phrasing. She said perfect cover the same way, this dismissive, cold way. "It's her." "Marco's widow," Nico said slowly, "working with the Belantes to destroy us." "She blames me for his death," Darius said, his voice empty of emotion in a way that was somehow worse than anger. "I knew she did. I didn't realize how far that blame would take her." "We need proof," Luca said. "A voice match isn't enough for the authorities. And if we move against her without evidence—" "She's part of the event planning," I interrupted. "She has access to everything. Guest lists, timing, security protocols. She's been helping them from the inside." Darius's expression went dangerous. "Pull every communication she's had in the last 6 months. Every email, every call. I want to know everyone she's been in contact with." "That'll take time," Nico said. "We have 48 hours. Darius looked at me. "Can you think of anything, any detail from what you overheard, that might tell us exactly what they're planning?" I closed my eyes, forcing myself back to that corridor. The man's voice laying out logistics. Vivienne's cold confirmations. "The children's performance," I said suddenly. "They mentioned it specifically. That's when all the cameras would be focused on the stage. That's when they'll make their move." "The performance is scheduled for 7:30, Darius said, 30 minutes into the event. "We change it," I said, my mind racing. "Move it earlier or later. Throw off their timing. If we change too much, They'll know we're onto them, Luca warned. Then we don't change the performance. I stood, pacing. We change everything else around it. Create new vulnerabilities they don't know about. Make them think their plan is working while we control the real flow. Darius watched me, something like pride flickering in his dark eyes. Explain. So I did. I laid out a plan where we'd shift entry points, adjust lighting in ways that would seem accidental but would actually expose their people, create decoy weak points that would draw them away from the children. It was risky, complicated, and required perfect execution. It could work, Lucas said finally. It has to work. Darius's phone was already in his hand. Because we're not canceling this event. Those kids are getting their night, and Vivian and the Belantes are going to answer for trying to take it from them. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying Vivian's words, her cold eyes, the realization that someone who'd stood beside Darius at Foundation meetings had been planning to destroy him all along. Planning to use children Marco had wanted to help as weapons. Around 2 a.m., I heard the keycard in the lock. Darius let himself in quietly, probably thinking I was asleep. When he saw me sitting by the window, he stopped. "You should be resting," he said. "So should you." He moved into the room, shedding his jacket, loosening his tie. He looked exhausted, not physically, but somewhere deeper. Like carrying the weight of this betrayal was grinding him down from the inside. "Vivian and I were never close," he said, sitting across from me. "But she was Marco's wife. His choice. I respected that. Protected her after he died. And all this time," he stopped, jaw tight. "She's grieving," I said quietly. "That doesn't excuse what she's doing, but grief makes people. Grief doesn't make you try to murder children, Leora. No, it doesn't." I leaned forward. "But revenge does. She's not trying to hurt the kids. She's trying to hurt you. They're just collateral damage to her. That's supposed to make it better. No, it's supposed to help you understand her so we can stop her. To her, the kids are a means to an end," I said. "To you, they're the whole point. That's the difference." He looked at me for a long moment. "How do you do that?" "Do what?" "See people clearly, even the worst ones. Even me. You're not the worst one. I've done terrible things. I know. I did know. I'd stop pretending I didn't. But you're also trying to give traumatized kids one perfect night. You're protecting my brother. I stopped, not sure how to finish that sentence. He stood, moving to the window beside me. "After this is over," he said quietly, "you could walk away, disappear. I'd make sure you and Rowan were set up somewhere safe, somewhere far from all of this." My chest tightened. "Is that what you want?" "What I want." He turned to face me, and the raw honesty in his expression made my breath catch. "What I want is impossible. I want you here. I want you safe. I want to keep you and also let you go. I want to be worthy of the way you look at me, which I know I'm not." I stood, closing the distance between us. "You don't get to decide what I'm worth, Darius, or what you're worth to me. Leora, I'm not walking away. Not after the event. Not after we stop the Belantes. Not ever." I put my hand on his chest, feeling his heart hammering beneath my palm. "I chose this. I chose you. Stop trying to give me an exit when I've already decided to stay." His hand covered mine, holding it against his heart. "You're going to regret this. Maybe, but it'll be my regret. My choice." He kissed me then, desperate, fierce, like a man trying to memorize something he was convinced he'd lose. I kissed him back with everything I had, trying to tell him without words that I wasn't going anywhere, that he was stuck with me, that whatever came next, we'd face it together. When we finally broke apart, his forehead rested against mine. 2 days, he said. We get through the next 2 days, keep those kids safe, and then we figure out the rest. Together. The morning of the event, I woke before dawn. Darius was already gone, probably coordinating final security details, but he'd left coffee and a note. "Stay put. Luca will bring you to the venue at 5 p.m. We've got this." I spent the day in a strange liminal space, reviewing final checklists, confirming vendor arrivals, trying not to think about everything that could go wrong, trying not to think about Vivian's cold eyes or the Belanti lieutenant who'd been watching me, or the children who'd be walking into a ballroom that might become a war zone. At 4 p.m., my phone rang. The secure one Darius had given me. "It's me," he said, and something in his voice made my stomach drop. "What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong. Everything's in place, but I need you to listen carefully." He paused. "If something happens tonight, if things go badly, Luca has instructions to get you out. Don't argue with him. Don't try to stay. Just go." "Darius." "Promise me, Leora." I closed my eyes. "I promise I'll be smart. That's the best I can do." He was quiet for a moment. Then, "I'll see you soon." "You better." At 5, Luca arrived with 2 other guards. They surrounded me like a living shield as we made our way down to the parking garage, into an armored SUV that felt absurdly dramatic and also completely necessary. The drive to the Riverside Hotel took 20 minutes, and with every minute that passed, the certainty grew in my chest. Tonight, everything would change. One way or another, nothing would ever be the same again. The Riverside Hotel ballroom had been transformed into a winter wonderland. Ice blue uplighting turned the walls into frozen glaciers. Artificial snow drifted gently from hidden machines in the ceiling. The Christmas tree in the corner stood 20 feet tall, covered in lights and ornaments that the children had made in their shelters and group homes. Tables were set with white linens and silver chargers, each place setting including a wrapped gift with a child's name carefully written on the tag. It was beautiful. It was perfect. And in 90 minutes, it might become a battlefield. I stood in the service corridor behind the ballroom, wearing the deep green dress Darius had sent over, elegant enough for the event, practical enough to move in. My hair was pinned up, my heels were lower than I'd normally wear, and I had a communication device tucked discreetly in my ear. "Sound check," Luca's voice said through the earpiece. "I hear you," I confirmed. "Boss is in position in the upper gallery. I'm on the main floor. Nico has the kitchen and service corridors. You stay in the staging area behind the performance platform unless we say otherwise." "Understood." Through the partially open door, I could see the first guests beginning to arrive. Donors in expensive suits and gowns, smiling for cameras, city officials, a local news crew. And then, slowly, the children. They came in small groups, shepherded by staff from St. Augustine's and 3 other shelters. Some looked overwhelmed, others excited. A little girl in a red velvet dress stopped just inside the entrance, staring at the tree with her mouth open. My chest tightened. These kids, we were doing this for these kids. "Target spotted," someone said through the comm. "Vivienne Moretti, entering through the main doors." I moved to where I could see without being seen. Vivienne looked stunning in black silk, her dark hair swept up, her expression serene and grieving, the perfect widow honoring her dead husband's legacy. She smiled at a donor, shook hands with a city councilman, and moved through the room like she belonged there, like she wasn't planning to destroy it all. "She's wired," Nico's voice said quietly. "Audio and possibly video. She's recording everything." "For the frame job," I murmured, mostly to myself. "Stay sharp," Luca said. "Belanti operatives should be moving into position soon." The next 30 minutes were surreal. I watched children find their assigned tables, watched their faces light up when they saw the gifts with their names, watched staff help the younger ones into their seats, watched the St. Augustine's choir gather nervously near the performance platform. Through it all, I knew Darius was watching from above. I couldn't see him, but I felt his presence like a physical weight. 2 unknowns just entered through the loading dock, Nico reported, moving toward the kitchen. "I see them," another voice confirmed. "Dressed as catering staff. Neither one is on our approved list." "Let them move," Luca said. "We need them all in position before we shut it down." My heart was hammering so hard I could barely breathe. At 7:15, the MC took the stage, a local radio personality who'd volunteered his time. He welcomed everyone, thanked the donors, and explained that the evening would begin with a special performance by the children's choir. Right on schedule. Exactly what the Belantis were expecting. 3 more in position near the main doors, someone reported. "They're carrying, confirming. Yes, they're armed." "Copy that," Lucas said. "Hold positions. We move on boss's signal." The choir filed onto the stage, 30 children in white and red, nervous and excited. The little girl in the red velvet dress was in the front row, clutching her sheet music. The music director raised her hands. And then, through my earpiece, I heard Darius's voice for the first time that night. Now, everything happened at once. The lights shifted, not dramatically, but enough that the accidental shadows I'd designed suddenly illuminated faces that had been trying to stay hidden. Security personnel who'd been positioned as waitstaff moved with swift precision toward the armed men near the doors. In the kitchen, I heard shouting. Near the loading dock, more commotion. But in the ballroom itself, the children kept singing. They didn't know, the donors didn't know, the cameras didn't know. Only the people trying to destroy this night realized their plan had just collapsed. Subject Vivienne is moving, someone said sharply, heading toward the service corridor. Toward me. I should have stayed put, should have let Darius's people handle it. But Vivienne knew these corridors as well as I did. She'd been part of planning this event, and if she made it to one of the external exits, she could disappear into the city before anyone could stop her. I slipped out of the staging area and into the service hallway. I could hear her heels clicking ahead of me, rapid and purposeful. I followed the sound, my own footsteps quiet on the industrial carpet. She turned a corner toward the loading dock exit, and I sped up. Vivienne, she spun, and for a second, I saw raw surprise on her face. Then it smoothed into cold calculation. Miss Dane, I should have known you'd be involved in whatever trap Darius set. You tried to use children as cover for an attack. You tried to destroy everything your husband built. Marco built a fantasy. Her voice was sharp as glass. He thought he could redeem this family, make it clean. Darius killed that fantasy along with him. Darius didn't kill Marco. He might as well have. He sent him into danger. He let him trust the wrong people. He failed him. She took a step toward me. And then he took over everything Marco loved and twisted it into another tool for his empire. That charity? It's just a PR move for him. Marco actually cared. So you decided to burn it all down, to traumatize children, to frame Darius for something he didn't do. I decided to make him feel what I feel, to take away everything he cares about the way he took Marco from me. Her smile was bitter, but I underestimated how much he'd care about you apparently. My breath caught. Oh, did you think I didn't notice? She laughed. The way he watches you, the way he changed everything about tonight's security because you asked. You're his weakness now, Miss Dane, which makes you... She moved fast, faster than I expected, her hand reaching for something in her clutch. But I'd spent 3 months learning every inch of this building, including which corridors had panic buttons and which had security, cameras with perfect sightlines. I lunged sideways, slapped the panic button on the wall, and kept moving. Vivienne followed, and I led her exactly where I wanted her, into a corridor intersection where 3 security cameras covered every angle. You want evidence, I said, backing up but keeping her in frame. Tell them. Tell everyone watching right now why you're working with the Belantes, why you tried to attack a children's charity. Say it out loud, Vivienne. Her expression twisted. You think you're clever. I think I'm someone who actually cares about what happens to those kids in there, unlike you. Unlike someone who'd use them as pawns to get revenge. They were always going to be pawns. That's what Darius does. He uses people, breaks them, discards them when they're no longer useful. I'm just making sure the world finally sees it. Heavy footsteps echoed from both ends of the corridor. Vivienne realized her mistake too late. She was trapped, recorded, and surrounded. Luca appeared from one direction, 2 other security personnel from the other. They moved with practiced efficiency, securing her without drama or violence. It's over, Mrs. Moretti, Luca said quietly. She didn't fight, just stared at me with cold hatred. You think you've won something. You think he'll actually keep you, but you're just another tool to him, Miss Dane. And when you're no longer useful. That's enough. Darius's voice cut through the corridor like a blade. He emerged from the shadows near the loading dock entrance, and the look on his face made even Vivienne go quiet. Take her to the secure holding room, he said to Luca. Contact the authorities. Give them everything, the recordings, the evidence of her communications with the Belantes, all of it. Sir, Luca hesitated. She's family. No. Darius's voice was flat, final. She stopped being family the moment she tried to hurt those children. Marco would never forgive me if I let this stand. As they led Vivienne away, Darius turned to me. You were supposed to stay in the staging area. She was getting away. So you cornered her alone, drew her out, got her to confess on camera. He moved closer, and I couldn't read his expression. You put yourself at risk again. I made a choice, my choice. For a moment, I thought he might actually be angry. Then his hand came up, cupping my face with devastating gentleness. You're going to give me a heart attack, Leora Dane. Better than letting her escape. He kissed me then, fierce and quick and full of too many emotions to name. When he pulled back, his forehead rested against mine. The Belantes, I asked. In custody. Luca's team moved the moment we had Vivienne's confession on tape. The authorities are processing them now. He pulled out his phone, checked something, then looked at me. The children are still singing. They have no idea anything happened. That was the point. That was your point? Your plan? Your redesign that made all of this possible? His thumb traced my cheekbone. You saved this entire night. We saved it. Together. From the ballroom, I could hear applause. The choir must have finished their first song. We should get back, I said. Those kids deserve to see their perfect evening through. In a minute, he pulled me closer, his voice dropping. I need to say something first. Darius, I was ready to do this the old way, to retaliate, to make Vivienne and the Belantes disappear quietly, to handle this like I've always handled threats. He paused. But you showed me a different way. Evidence, authorities, legal consequences, justice instead of revenge. You showed me what Marco was trying to teach me all along, my chest tightened. I didn't do anything except you did everything. You chose courage over safety. You chose those kids over your own security. You chose to trust me even when I gave you every reason not to. His eyes held mine. And now I'm choosing you, not as a tool, not as a temporary partner, as someone I want in my life permanently, someone I... He stopped, jaw tight. Say it, I whispered. I love you. The words came out rough, like they'd been locked away too long. I love you, and I know that complicates everything. And I know I have no right to ask you to stay in this world, but... I kissed him to shut him up. When I pulled back, I was smiling despite everything. I love you too, you impossible man. And I'm not going anywhere. Your business can expand. I'll run the Foundation's events, all of them, not just the Christmas Gala. I straightened my dress, suddenly full of plans. We'll make this bigger, better, more kids, more shelters. Real impact beyond one night. The look on his face was worth everything I'd been through to get here. You want to stay, permanently. I want to build something that matters, with you. Something your brother would be proud of. He kissed me again, slower this time, and I felt the last walls between us crumble. When we finally made it back to the ballroom, the event was in full swing. Children were eating, laughing, opening gifts. The little girl in red velvet was showing her new teddy bear to a donor who looked genuinely moved. No one knew how close they'd come to disaster. No one except us. Darius's hand found mine beneath the table where we sat, fingers intertwining. This is dangerous, he murmured. Staying with me, building a life in this world. I know. You'll see things you wish you hadn't. Meet people who scare you. Navigate situations that... Darius, I squeezed his hand. I chose this with my eyes open. Stop trying to talk me out of it. I just need you to be sure. I turned to face him fully. 3 months ago, I was nobody. I was wasted potential, drowning in debt, planning parties no one cared about. Then you saw me. You saw what I could do. You gave me resources and trust and a purpose that actually matters. I glanced at the children around us. I've never been more sure of anything in my life. His grip on my hand tightened. Then we do this together, all of it. The foundation, the events, the life, partnership. Partnership, I agreed. 2 hours later, after the last child had been taken back to their shelter with arms full of gifts and hearts full of magic, After the donors had left and the cameras had been packed away, Darius and I stood alone in the empty ballroom. The artificial snow had stopped falling. The lights had been dimmed. The Christmas tree still glowed in the corner, covered in homemade ornaments. "We did it," I said softly. "You did it." He pulled me against him, and I rested my head on his chest, listening to his heartbeat. "You took a disaster and turned it into something beautiful. I had help. You had an idea, a vision, and the courage to see it through even when everything was falling apart." He kissed the top of my head. "That's all you, Leora." I thought about the journey that had brought me here, the desperate email 3 months ago, the first site meeting where I'd stood my ground about child safety, the moment I'd overheard that conversation and chosen to call Darius instead of running. Every decision that had led to this moment, standing in an empty ballroom with a dangerous man who looked at me like I was the most precious thing in his world. "What happens now?" I asked. "Now?" He pulled back to look at me. "Now we go home. We sleep. Tomorrow we start planning the next event, and the one after that. We build something lasting, something good. In a world that's not always good." "In a world that's not always good," he agreed. "But trying anyway. Because that's what Marco wanted. That's what you want. And somehow, you've made me want it too." I smiled up at him. "I'm very persuasive. You're terrifying, but I wouldn't have it any other way." He kissed me then, slow and deep, and I felt the future opening up before us, complicated and dangerous and full of possibility. I'd chosen this life, this man, this purpose, and I'd never been more certain of anything. 3 weeks later, I stood in my new office at the Foundation headquarters, reviewing proposals for a spring carnival event. The space was mine, decorated with photos from the Christmas Gala, thank you cards from children, and a framed picture of me and Darius at the event, his hand at my back, both of us smiling. Rowan had visited twice, still trying to wrap his head around my new life. He'd met Darius, asked pointed questions about intentions and safety, and ultimately given his grudging approval with a warning that if I got hurt, he'd find a way to make a Mafia boss regret it. I'd never loved my baby brother more. The Christmas Gala had made national news, not for an attack, but for being one of the most successful charity events in Chicago's history. The footage of the children's choir, the stories of kids from troubled homes experiencing real magic. The exposure had been overwhelming. 3 more shelters had asked if we could include their children next year. 5 major donors had committed to ongoing support. And the Belantes and Vivian were facing multiple charges, their conspiracy documented and prosecuted. Justice, not revenge. For the first time, Marco's legacy felt alive instead of buried. "You're thinking too hard," Darius's voice came from the doorway. I looked up to find him leaning against the frame, jacket off, tie loosened, looking at me with that expression that still made my heart skip. "I'm thinking that 3 months ago, I was nobody." "You were never nobody," he crossed the room, pulling me up from my desk and into his arms. "You were always this. I just got lucky enough to see it first." "Lucky enough to have me overhear a conspiracy, you mean?" "Lucky enough to have you choose courage. Choose those kids. Choose me." He kissed me softly. "Best decision you ever made." "Second best," I corrected. "Best decision was telling that venue coordinator the staging was unsafe. That's what got your attention." His laugh was low and warm. "Fair point." I rested my head against his chest, listening to his heartbeat, thinking about the long, winding road that had brought us here, the fear and the danger and the impossible choices that had somehow led to this, to purpose, to partnership, to love in the middle of darkness. "I'm not wasted potential anymore," I said quietly. "No." His arms tightened around me. "You're exactly where you're supposed to be, doing exactly what you were meant to do." "With exactly who I was meant to do it with?" "With exactly who you were meant to do it with." I tilted my head back to look at him. "Even though it's dangerous, even though your world is... my world is better with you in it. Brighter, more hopeful, more human." He cupped my face. "You make me want to be the man who deserves you, and I'm going to spend the rest of my life trying to become him." "You already are. Leora, you are. You're not perfect, but you're trying, you're changing, you're building something that matters." I smiled. That's all anyone can ask. He kissed me then, and I kissed him back. And somewhere in the building below us, preparations were already underway for the next event, the next group of children who'd get to feel special and safe and seen. I'd started this journey desperate and drowning, trying to save a dying business. I'd ended it as an architect of hope, building magic for children who needed it most, partnered with a man who saw me clearly and loved me anyway. I was no longer invisible. I was no longer powerless. I was no longer afraid. I was exactly who I was always meant to be. And I'd chosen it all with my eyes wide open. Thank you for listening all the way to the end. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe so you don't miss the next Mafia love story. And tell me in the comments where you're listening from and what you thought of this narrator. Your feedback really helps me make these even better for you. Thank you for letting my stories keep you company. It truly means more than you know.